This podcast is intended for a mature audience. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Legend of the Bones. Following in the footsteps of giants, Legend of the Bones is a chimera. A mix of old-school tabletop RPG and dark fantasy storytelling. As its name might suggest, in Legend of the Bones the dice rule. There'll be no rerolls, no fudging the dice, no metacurrency. The roll of the bones will determine the character's destiny, and no one will be spared their fate. None shall escape the destiny of bone. Last time on Legend of the Bones. Following the companions' battle with the Reaver of Varlak, the Reaver's body dissolved away, leaving behind only his clothing, armour and his cursed axe, Soul Cleaver. The weapon tried to lure Beric into taking it, but fortunately the big man was able to resist the spell. At that moment, the companions were alerted to a young woman, watching them from beyond the chamber's partially collapsed wall. She retreated at being discovered, but Lena managed to coax the woman into revealing herself. It transpired that Lena had known the woman, Edith, when they had been children. She was the niece of the Ealdorman of Godsport, once accused of being a witch by none other than Reynard of Harburg. Edith had disappeared shortly after, and years later had become Demelza's apprentice. Edith led the companions beyond the collapsed wall to a vast natural cavern. Here, the two women became reacquainted, sharing their respective stories. And after, while in this relative place of safety, the companions decided to rest for the night. In the morning, Edith revealed to Valen that she had found the talk belonging to the Fifth Warden. She led the companions back to the T-junction, where the pentacle was inscribed into the stone floor, claiming it was here that she found the talk. Valen re-examined the symbols etched at each point of the star, this time noticing a circular groove surrounding each. Taking the now complete set of talks, he placed them one by one into the grooves, and when the final one was set into place, a concealed door magically opened, leading deeper into the vault. But we will leave the companions for now, and catch up with Canute and his journey to find Beric's father, Jarl Einar. Chapter 64, Part 1. Day 62, Late Morning. Party status: Canute, 40 out of 40 hit points. Arn, 39 out of 39 hit points. Raven, 32 out of 32 hit points. The Uberdrache cut gracefully through the white-tipped waves, her sleek form slicing through the water like a blade, driven ever forward by a brisk southeasterly breeze that billowed out her great square sail. Having loaded fresh barrels of salted herring, bread and ale, the crew had made sail shortly after the 9th bell. Arn had successfully recruited 3 new hands to join the crew, and though they were not hardened warriors, it was clear from their calloused hands and steady feet that the young men had experience at sea, and for now that was all that Canute needed. The Skarne warlord stood atop the steering platform, the high sun warming his back, his blonde hair whipping around his face in the downwind. A broad, satisfied grin played across his lips. Not only was he most at home at sea, but the gods had blessed them with almost perfect sailing conditions. The Northman surveyed the ship, watching the same quiet contentment in the faces of his crew. With no need for oars, the men were mostly left to their own devices, some taking advantage of the lull to tend to mundane tasks. A few were making repairs, others sharpened the edges of weapons or mended the links of their mail, A handful busied themselves with bailing out water when needed. Still, beneath every action was a shared truth. That this was what each man lived for. The freedom of the Whale Road. They had earned this brief reprieve, Canute mused solemnly. There would be trials enough in the days ahead. His thoughts were broken as Arn ascended the steering platform, his boots thudding on the planks.
It's a fine day to be at sea, my lord,
His oathman declared, the wind catching his words and carrying them off.
That it is.
Canute nodded in agreement. Then, eyes narrowing, looked past the warrior.
How fare the new hands?
Arn cast a glance back down the ship's length, to where the 3 recruits laboured over repairs to the spare sail. He turned back, his expression unreadable.
They will do.
His tone was dry, measured, neither approving nor dismissive. Canute gave a short, amused snort.
Well, make sure they at least know the sharp end of a spear.
I will, lord. But don't expect to put them in the front rank of the shield wall anytime soon.
Canute laughed, but the sound faded quickly as his gaze turned forward once more. The Uvadraka, which up until this point had been hugging the coastline, passed the rugged tip of the Penglanau Peninsula. Beyond was the open sea, and with that came a much greater risk of peril. The journey to the nearest point of Llanrhys is around 200 miles. Having done a little research into the speed and construction of different longships, under good conditions, the smaller Snekker type, like the Uvadraka, can travel around 80 miles in a 12-hour period. With Canute and Ravin sharing duties at the helm, they can also travel through the night. So all being well, the journey should take 2 days. Off mic, I already rolled for weather and wind direction for day 62. But what about losing direction? Back in episode 58, we heard how Ravin, Canute's second, was a particularly capable navigator. Therefore, I will rule that there is just a 1 in 6 chance that the Uvadraka will drift off course. A 6, so no. Stumble upon. 10, nothing. Wandering encounter. A 3, no encounter. Day 63, weather. A 2! That is not good news. According to my weather table, that indicates a storm. Clearly this is going to have a much bigger impact for characters at sea, but I'll come to that in a moment. Let's finish the rolls for day 63. Wind direction. 6. That's southwest. Well, that does make sense. The prevailing weather systems in this part of my world do come from that direction. Stumble upon. A 1! Oh no, that indicates something very bad. Can this day get any worse for the Skarne? What about a wandering encounter? A 2. Well, of course there had to be one. Before I get to that, according to the basic expert rules, ships in a storm can avoid damage if they sail with the wind, effectively riding the edge of the storm. However, in doing so, the ship travels 3 times its movement rate, and if the ship hits land as a result, then it will be wrecked. Given his and Ravin's knowledge of these waters, I think this is a risk that Canute would take. The storm will rage for 4d6 hours. 13. Okay, so the Skarne will be blown 340 miles northeast. Let me just consult my wider world map and do some calculations. Back in a minute. Okay, I'm back. So luckily for Canute, travelling 340 miles northeast will still leave the Uvadraka in the open ocean, and approximately 120 miles from the northeastern coast of Llanrhys. This will add another half a day to their journey, and ultimately may or may not aid their search for Einar. But frankly, That is the least of their problems. With that negative stumble upon and a wandering encounter, I am going to design a set piece off mic, and we will find out what happens in the narrative. Chapter 64, Part 2, Day 63, Dawn. Party status. The party status is unchanged. It had begun to rain overnight. A few hesitant drops at first, as the wind shifted with a restless moan to the southwest. But by the grey light of dawn, the downpour had settled into a steady, relentless rhythm, drumming against the deck and pooling in the spaces between the Uberdracker's row benches. The crew had rigged an oil-soaked sheet across the ship's midsection, its edges flapping vigorously in the wind, taking turns beneath it for a brief reprieve from the elements. Yet even so, with the sail furled and the storm swelling around them, all hands were either rowing or bailing, and every man aboard was soaked to the bone, their clothes clinging coldly to their skin. Wet hair plastered in tangled strands across his brow, Canute moved purposefully through the rising puddles, boots splashing as he passed among the crew, offering words of encouragement as he went. His eyes fixed on the steering platform ahead, where Raven stood braced against the helm. The old warrior's weather-beaten face was drawn into a grim scowl, jaw clenched, the muscles in his arm taut as he fought against the growing resistance of the sea. Canute climbed up beside Raven, the wind throwing a fine spray against his face. To the west, a wall of rolling black clouds twisted and surged across the horizon, moving in their direction with ominous speed.
"We cannot fight against this, Lord!"
Raven shouted, but the wind tore the words from his lips almost as soon as they had left his mouth. Just then, a jagged fork of lightning split the sky to the west, followed by a deafening clap of thunder that rattled the timbers beneath their feet.
Aye!
Canute bellowed back, squinting into the stinging rain that lashed across his face.
Get the men to hoist the sail!
He commanded decisively, seizing the steering oar from Raven with both hands.
We must ride the storm!
Raven leapt down from the platform, his voice rising above the din as he barked orders to the men. The crew moved quickly, stowing the oars and working to lower the Uberdracker's heavy sail. Canute, meanwhile, pulled hard on the steering oar, turning the ship to starboard until she sat downwind of the tempest. The moment the sail unfurled, the wind caught it with a deep, resonant snap, billowing it outward and sending a shudder through the ship as she leapt forward. The prow sliced through the ever-growing waves, just as the sky flashed once more. The sea surged and writhed beneath them, waves towering 20 feet or more into the air, rocking the ship violently, yet still she surged forward, the wind now her ally, to escape the fury of the storm. Raven bellowed orders until his voice was hoarse, roar from the shouting above the roar and wind of the water. Frantically the crew fought on, their lives depending on it, endlessly bailing seawater as wave after punishing wave crashed over the hull. The Uberdracker groaned beneath the onslaught, her strakes shivering under the weight of the sea. Canute's muscles screamed with the effort of keeping the vessel steady, his arms locked around the great steering oar, every sinew burning with the strain of resisting the sea's relentless pull. He clenched his jaw and pushed through the pain. There was no room for weakness. Not now. His hand brushed against the brooch given to him by Lena, and the memory of her voice suddenly echoed in his mind.
I have given this brooch the blessing of Havra, that he may protect you on your voyage.
He clasped the brooch with his fingers, praying to the ancestors that the cleric's blessing had the power to save them. His eyes swept the ship, tracking the men as they toiled against the storm's fury. He caught sight of Arn. The warrior was wrestling with the length of rigging that had torn loose, wrapping it around his forearms and anchoring it with practiced hands. Then, without warning, a massive wave reared up and curled over the ship, crashing down with thunderous force. Arn vanished beneath the torrent. Canute's heart lurched. For a terrible moment, he feared the sea had claimed his friend, dragging him to a cold, nameless grave beneath the waves. But then, through the sheets of rain and spray, Arn burst back into view, grinning like a madman. That wild grin spoke words a man could not, that a man never feels more alive than when death is his close companion. These were not common men. They were Skarne, sailors of the Whale Road. Every man aboard had sworn an oath to Canute, to follow him, no matter the cost, to whatever fate the gods rolled in their game of dice. Yet oath or no, he bore responsibility for each of them. He was their lord, their ring giver, their silver giver. His choices bore weight, not only of honour or shame, but of life or death. And if they were to die, then it must make them worthy of Valhall, and not be in vain. The hours dragged on, indistinct from the chaos of wind, sea and rain. Still the storm howled, its fury unrelenting, until at last it began to loosen its grip. The sky lightened, almost imperceptibly at first. Then the clouds broke and began to part. Shafts of golden light pierced through in places, casting radiant beams across the water. The wind eased, softening to little more than a brisk breeze, and the sea, at long last, began to settle, its rage giving way to a slow, rolling calm. They had survived. Chapter 64, Part 3, Day 63, Late Afternoon. Canute walked the length of the ship, his boots splashing quietly in the shallow puddles as he inspected the damage. The deck creaked beneath him, water dripping from the rigging in steady rhythm. He offered words of praise to the men, clasping shoulders, nodding with quiet approval. Miraculously, not a single soul had been lost to the sea. The Uberdrache bore only minor wounds, some frayed lines, a few snapped ropes, cracked wood here and there, but her bones were sound. He ordered a barrel of ale to be opened, and the crew gathered eagerly. Laughter returned once more to the deck. They passed around cups, swapping stories of the storm, each tale more heroic than the last. The scent of ale mixed with that of damp wool and seaweed. They were tired, and they were wet, but against all odds, they had triumphed. Canute drained his own cup and chuckled. Arn was standing near the mast, entertaining his fellows with a tale of having been seduced mid-storm by a sea maiden. The crew roared as he mimicked the mermaid's song, draping long green ribbons of seaweed over his head and swinging his hips in a lewd dance. Arn had changed in recent weeks, no longer just another arm among many. He had grown into something more, bold, dependable, assured. His quiet strength and ready humour had earned him a place of respect among the men, especially the younger warriors, who now watched him with admiration in their eyes. Canute filled another cup and made his way back to the steering platform, where Raven stood with the oar in hand, guiding the ship's course with his usual stoic calm. Canute offered the cup in silent thanks, and received the oar in return. He gestured with his chin towards Arn's performance.
Your nephew spins quite the tale,
he observed with a grin. Raven gave a short, amused snort.
His father was just the same.
His voice was thick with memory. Eric, Arn's father, had died the same day as Jarl Harold, Canute's own father.
I remember.
Canute replied, his tone quieter now.
How far do you think we've been blown off course?
He asked, shifting the subject.
Many hundreds of miles.
Raven answered, without hesitation, his eyes scanning the horizon.
But since we have never known precisely where Einar is, it may matter not.
Before Canute could respond, the ship jolted violently with a thunderous crash. The sound of splintering wood split the air, and the Uberdracker suddenly lurched sideways, hurling men from their feet. Shouts of confusion turned to cries of terror as several immense arms, thick and lined with pink suckers, rose dripping from the water, groping blindly at the air above their heads, else wrapping themselves around parts of the ship. One coiled around a shield post, another snapped an oar clean in two. The sea boiled where something monstrous moved beneath. The crew scrambled to their feet, reaching for spears, axes and shields. The laughter was gone. Only fear remained. Canute stood frozen for a heartbeat, watching in mounting horror as a monstrous form rose from the depths. Its skin, reddish pink, glistened under the sun, and from beneath the root of those suckered arms, a beaked maw gaped wide with nightmarish hunger.
Entering combat.
There is going to be no respite for the crew. That is what you get with a natural one stumble upon. The Uberdracker has been set upon by a giant squid. But not just any giant squid. This is a kraken, a terrifying monster from Norse myth. Its body is 40 feet long, its 8 suckered arms are the same again, and its 2 barbed tentacles are 80 feet in length. Whilst the AD&D Monster Manual does have a listing for a kraken, how it is described does not quite fit with what I have in mind. Therefore, I have adapted the giant squid monster profile from the BX rules and made it a far more formidable encounter. The kraken is a 20 hit dice monster with an ascending armor class of 14. It gets a plus 13 to attack. However, because its appendages will be effectively attacking blind, I will apply a -4 penalty, reducing the attack bonus to 9. Each round, it makes the following attacks. Its 2 barbed tentacles deal 2d6 points of damage to a target, or 1d10 damage to the ship's hull. Of its 8 arms, 6 deal 1d8 points of damage, while the other 2 hold the squid in place against the ship. After a successful hit by a tentacle or arm, subsequent rounds, the victim suffers automatic damage from constriction. Finally, its beaked mouth will do 1d6 points of damage to the hull, after which it will automatically consume victims fed to it by an arm or tentacle. Talking of damage to the hull, the Uberdracker has an armor class of 11 and 70 hull points. Just like hit points, if its hull points fall to 0, then the ship will be destroyed, sinking in 2d6 rounds. Now clearly, with a 40-strong crew, individual combat is not going to work, so the combat will run as follows. Canute, Arn and Raven will fight individually as named characters. I will pit them against the 2 tentacles, which will randomly attack them or the ship. The arms will target the rest of the crew, who will be put into 3 units of 12 men. Each unit will have 144 hit points. This assumes that the crew are second level fighters with 12 hit points each. For every 12 hit points lost to a single arm, a crew member will be killed. In terms of attacking, each unit may make 2 attack rolls, each targeting a separate arm. Any successful hit will deal 3d6 points of damage, representing multiple strikes. Finally, if 3 or more of its tentacles or arms are severed, the Kraken must make a morale check, or flee at 3 times its movement rate. Tentacles have 12 hit points, and arms 8. This means the Kraken's hit points will min out at 104, but let's determine that now. Rolling 2 lots of 10d8. And... okay, that's 118 total. Finally, because they are at sea, none of the crew, including Canute, Arn and Raven, are wearing any mail, and as such, they can only use shields in defence. I think that's everything. Right then, let's get to it. Round 1. The Kraken will not be surprised, but on a roll of 1 or 2 the crew will be. A 1! The Kraken will get 3 attacks. The monstrous creature rises out of the water. Its beak clamps down on the side of the hull and snaps some of the strake away for 2 hull points of damage. For the tentacles, I will randomly select their targets on a d6. On a 1, the target will be Canute. On a 2, it will be Arn. 3 will be Raven, and on a 4 to 6, the tentacle will attack the ship itself. Tentacle 1 will attack. A 4, it's the ship. Rolling to hit. With its bonus, it only needs a 2 or more. An 18 is a hit for... oof! 10 points of hull damage, as the tentacle rips up some of the rope edges. Tentacle 2 will attack. It's the ship again. With a 12, it hits for 8 points of damage, as more rowing benches are ripped from the hull. To resolve the arm attacks, I will group the rolls. Firstly, arms 1 and 2 will target crew unit 1, needing just a 2 or more to hit. Rolling 2 d20s for their attacks. A 6 and a 14, both hit for 5 and 7 points of damage, as the arms smash into 2 of the men before curling around their bodies and lifting them off the ground. Arms 3 and 4 will attack Unit 2 in the same fashion. Again, both hit for a total of 7 and 8 points of damage, as 2 more men are swept up. Arms 5 and 6 both flail around for a target. A 12 and 9, both hit for 8 and 4 points of damage respectively. That was a devastating first round. The Uberdracker has taken significant damage, and 6 of the crew are held by the Kraken's arms. Round 2. Initiative. The Kraken. A 3. The crew. A 6. Gathering their wits after the Kraken's surprise assault, the crew leap into action. Canute, sword in hand, swings at the first tentacle. The Northman will need a 6 or more to hit. A 9 is a hit, for a total of 10 points of damage, as his blade bites deep into the rubbery flesh. Blood sprays from the wound, splattering over the deck. Arn grabs his spear and thrusts it at the second tentacle. He will need a 9 or more to hit. A 1! That's a critical fumble. As Arn moves to strike, the tentacle sweeps under his legs, knocking the warrior off his feet. Arn will lose his next turn. Raven's combat specialism is the Skarne axe, a 2-handed weapon like the famed Dane axe from our own Viking age. He moves to strike the second tentacle, needing a 9 or more to hit. But with a 3, he is shoved out of the way by Arn as he fell. Crew Unit 1 attacks arms 1 and 2, trying to free their constricted crewmates. They will need 13 or more on their 2 attacks. A 17 and a 5. Arm 1 is struck by multiple spears and axes for a total of just 5 damage. Unit 2 attacks arms 3 and 4. A 15 and a 12. Arm 3 is hit for a total of 12 points of damage. The men hack down with their axes. Their constricted crewmate falls to the deck as the severed arm flails wildly in a shower of blood. The Uberdracker rocks violently as the Kraken shudders in pain. Meanwhile, Unit 3 attacks arms 5 and 6. But with double 6s, the rocking of the ship throws each man off balance, and they are unable to land a blow. Enraged by its injuries, the Kraken lashes out. Tentacle 1 will attack. It's the ship again. A 15 is hit for another 9 points of damage. As it recoils from Canute's blow, the tentacle crashes into the spiral that tips the stern. There is a crack of wood splintering as it smashes into the sea. Tentacle 2 will attack. It's Arn. It will need just a 3 or more to hit. A 17. The tentacle curls around Arn's prone body, lifting the warrior off the ground and crushing him for 10 points of damage. Arn cries out in agony, coughing blood. Arms 2 to 5 all have a man in their grip and will automatically deal constriction damage. Let's roll those now on 5d8s. Arm 2 does 5 points of damage. There is a sickening crunch as the man's ribcage collapses under the pressure, killing him instantly. The arm tosses the body to the Kraken's open beak, which tears the flesh to shreds. Arm 3 does 3 points of damage. The man opens his mouth to scream, but there is no air in his lungs. Arm 4 does 8 points of damage. The man's face reddens and his eyes bulge as his life is snuffed out, and his body is tossed towards the Kraken's waiting maw. Arm 5 does 5 points of damage. The arm smashes the man headfirst into the deck, breaking his neck and killing him instantly. The beak snaps greedily once more as the body is dropped into the water. Arm 6 does 3 points of damage. The man dangles by his leg. There is a snapping sound, and he screams as his broken femur breaks through the skin. Oh man, things have just got very real as we enter round 3. It is imperative that the crew win the initiative. The Kraken. A 6! The crew. A 5. This is bad. Very bad. Tentacle 1 will attack. It's the ship again. An 11 is hit for 10 points of hull damage. Man, the Uverdrak is taking a beating. Canute dodges to the side as the tentacle smashes into the deck, splintering strakes. Water bubbles up through the hull. Tentacle 2 tightens around Arn, inflicting 8 points of damage. Arn wails in pain. Arms 3 and 6 crush their victims for an automatic 2 and 3 points respectively, killing both men in the process before tossing their bodies towards the waiting beak. Arm 2 attacks Unit 1, seeking a fresh victim. A 16 is hit for 8 points of damage as another man is lifted screaming into the air. Arm 2 attacks Unit 2. A 7 is hit for 1 point of damage as it curls around the foot of another crewman. Arm 5 lashes out. An 11 is hit for 2 points of damage as it too grabs another victim. Things are getting desperate, but if the crew can sever just 2 more arms or tentacles, then the Kraken may flee. Canute swipes at the badly injured Tentacle 1. A 10 is a hit for a total of 10 points of damage. The Northman brings his blade down, hacking through the rubbery flesh. There is a spray of blood which splatters across his face as the tentacle is severed in 2. The ship rocks violently again as the Kraken reels in pain. Raven swings his great axe at Tentacle 2, desperately trying to save his nephew, Arn. A 15 is hit for a total of 11 points of damage. Blood mists in the air, but the flesh hangs on by a few inches. The tentacle is down to just 1 hit point. For a moment, it seems the tentacle will drop Arn, but somehow it maintains its hold on the warrior. Crew Unit 1 will focus both its attacks on Arm 2. A 13 and a 10, for a total of 8 points of damage. That's enough. A hail of blows from axes and spears sever the arm, freeing the man held by it. The ship rocks violently again. Unit 2 attacks arms 3 and 4. A 3 and a 12. Arm 4 takes 11 points of damage as it too is hacked apart. The crewman held by his foot falls to the deck with a thump as the severed part writhes in the air, splattering gore over the crew. Unit 3 attacks arms 5 and 6. But with a 2 and a 3, both tentacles evade their blows. Round 4. Having sustained the severing of one of its tentacles and 3 of its arms, the Kraken must now make a morale check or flee. The Kraken must roll a 7 or less to remain in the fight. An 8. Okay, it will flee, but the question remains, will the Kraken drop Arn and the other crew member still in its grasp before it flees, or will it drag them away? I will roll a save versus paralysis for Arn and the crewman to see whether they are released. The crewman must roll a 14 or more to escape. A 15. The crewman is dropped as the arm recoils, the squid needing its arms to swim away. Arn must roll a 12 or more to escape. An 11. Arn manages to free his arm, but cannot escape. This is not good. The only chance Arn has is if the crew can win the initiative and land a blow. Initiative. The Kraken. A 2. The crew. I roll a 1. The Kraken withdraws its arms, releasing the Uberdracker's hull. The ship rocks in the process, causing the crew to stumble. Arn is lifted, screaming over the side of the ship. Canute races desperately to the edge. His eyes lock with Arn's, seeing the terror in his Oathman's eyes.
No!
Canute climbs up on the strakes to jump overboard in a futile attempt to save him, but Raven pulls him back. No, Lord! Around the ship, the water turns black as the Kraken releases gallons of black ink to hide its escape. There is a sudden whoosh as the Kraken propels away at astonishing speed, causing a wave to almost capsize the ship. Canute and Raven fall back, and all around men cry out as they are knocked off their feet. As the motion subsides, Canute shakes Raven off, rushing back to the side of the ship. But the Kraken is gone, and so is Arn, down to the fathomless depths. Thank you for listening to Legend of the Bones. As this was a longer episode, I'll keep things brief. As always, where would I be without my amazing cast of voice talent? Returning to the show, in the role of Arn, is Brian C. Rideout. Brian is a game designer, podcaster and producer, whose shows Transreal News and Swords Against Madness are 2 of my favourites. And also returning, once again in the role of Canute, is my comrade-at-arms, Jon Cohen, creator of Tale of the Manticore. My sincere thanks to Brian and John. I am, as always, incredibly grateful. I'll put these awesome guys' links in the show notes. Finally, I'd love to know what you think of the show, and I do respond to every message I receive. So with that in mind, you can contact me on X at LegendBones, Blue Sky at LegendBones, Mastodon at LegendBones, at TTRPG-hangout.social, Instagram at LegendOfTheBones, email at legendofthebones@gmail.com, or go to legendofthebones.blogspot.com for show notes, house rules, character profiles, art, maps and more. Join me next time to find out what awaits our adventurers as the bones decide their fate. None shall escape the destiny of bone.